Hi, and welcome to the PEPP Story live show. It's day 31, the last day of January, and the last day of my 31-day challenge to go live. Today, I have with me a very interesting guest, Joe Berry. And Joe speaks from passion about a topic of peace. When you've seen the beauty pageants, what do you want to do with the world? I want world peace. Well, Joe actually does want world peace. And we're going to find out about that in a minute. So, hi, Joe. Welcome to PEPP Story Live. It is all about public speaking, but it is fascinating. When I saw you, peace activist, and I think that's how you pretty much define yourself, isn't it, as a peace activist? And your passion for world peace. I thought that's been a butt of so many. People must make jokes, comments about that. If you're,
I think that's the first time. I love it. So I'm not so much a peace activist anymore. I think I used to call myself that, but I am absolutely passionate about peace. That is true.
and it's a difficult issue, isn't it? We're in a world where, if anything, in the past few years, we've seen quite the opposite. We've seen people almost antagonizing each other and doing things to destabilize peace, to make everything uncomfortable.
I know it seems like the divides between us get greater than ever. The us and them. We're the ones that are right and you're the ones that are wrong. And I despair a little because I know the impact of when the I'm right, you're wrong goes to such a deep degree that people start hurting each other.
I mean, being transgender, I've seen this just within the transgender community, where we've been campaigning for a long time for not having to go through endless hoops with doctors and all sorts of things, just to be able to say, actually, I don't identify as male, I identify as female, or I identify as none of the above. I'm, something else. It has caused so much bitter rhetoric coming up from people we didn't expect it from, and I think this is the problem, isn't it? These kind of things, Brexit, things which are causing friction, stuff with Trump in America. I find it sometimes quite shocking when you suddenly find people you've known for ages are on the other side of a divide, and you're fighting across a divide. It's quite unnerving.
I know it's so sad, and no one should go through what you've been through, and many have been criticised and bullied. And I work a lot with Muslim girls who every day get verbal attacks on them because they're Muslim, and they just have to take it in their stride, and that's not okay. I really want us to have a world where people can choose how they want to live, their sexuality, can practice whatever religion they want or none. And that world right now seems very far off.
And it's not because they're Muslim, is it? It's because they wear clothes which tell the world that they
they can't. They wear the hijab.
And that's the challenge, isn't it? If someone's transgender but doesn't tell anybody, that's it. They're safe. It's the moment you tell someone, that's it. Then all of a sudden, all bets are off, and people, I can see you are. So yeah, I see with trans people, everybody trying to hide who they really are. So let's just talk about the big day that started everything for you, 12th of October, 1984. I remember it really well. I used to work in Brighton. I wasn't there at that time, but it shook me because obviously I know the Grand Hotel, and I think it shook everybody that something like this could happen. It was probably one of the worst bombings that have ever been, in peacetime in the UK.
Yeah, people do remember it, definitely. Those that were alive at the time, everyone remembers where they were. It was one of those events.
Yeah. So your reaction to that was obviously quite different to what other people would have expected, and I wonder probably to what you might have even thought of yourself.
Yeah, so my father was killed in that attack along with 4 others. And it was the IRA who said they were responsible. And at that time, I mean, you remember, Ricky, there were bombs going off in London.
Oh, everywhere.
Bomb scares, and but I never thought it was going to affect me. I never lived in fear. And I know a lot of people who from Northern Ireland who did live in with that fear, but I didn't. And it was a massive, massive shock. And from the moment the bomb went off to hearing they'd found my dad's body to 2 days later, I felt overwhelmed because I'm now part of a war. I could feel the pain of being in a violent conflict. And so I couldn't go back to the person I had been. Not only I lost my dad, who I'm adored, but I also lost part of me. So that's why 2 days later I said, I'm going to find a way to bring something positive out of this. I'm going to find a way to understand those who killed my father. Now, the IRA at that time were like so demonized in the papers that we couldn't even hear Sinn Féin talk at that time. That
No.
do you remember I was never going to hear the stories of the IRA from the media. But a journey started, you know, and I just trusted that somehow I was going to find a way to bring something positive. But I mean, a lot of things I tried straight away didn't really work. It's been a long, long journey.
So why it was St James's Church you went to? Because that has a long connection actually with speaking, because the crypt of St James's Church has been the place where, you know, for over many years there have been lunchtime speakers, evening speakers. Did you have a connection with it, or was it just somewhere?
No, I did. At the time, Donald Reeves was the rector there, and he opened the doors to everyone, absolutely everyone. So we had the Greek women come in there. We had all sorts, and it was a place where I knew I was welcome, even though I was not a practicing Christian. And so that's where I went on the Sunday. I remember just sitting in the service, and I just no one knew what had happened to me. I just sat there on my own. I think I was in between like family engagements. I had a few hours. I just went there, and that's when I made that commitment.
But you campaign for peace, and I can understand that. It's I used to go to Northern Ireland quite a lot during the 70s, so I know the uncomfortableness. I've even been sitting in a meeting when a bomb went off down the street, and I sort of jumped around and said, "Oh, don't worry, it's just a bomb," and that was the sort of blasé way in which people in Northern Ireland accepted it. You walked into a hotel, you walked through iron gates, everything was checked, and
you remember, the British tanks were there at the airport. I mean, compared to London, it was so different, and yet it was an hour by plane.
We drove into the centre of Belfast with a colleague who was there. He parked his car. He said, "Do not leave the car." He said, "I'm just going to go in there. I'll be 5 minutes. Please do not leave the car, or the car will be gone." I said, "What do you mean?" And somebody pulled up in front of me, got out of their car, walked into a shop, and within a minute, there were 5 soldiers around the car. And I thought, whoa. I had no idea where they came from. They just appeared out of nowhere. The guy came out, he got told off, drove off, and they disappeared back into nowhere again. It was a very, very strange, weird atmosphere there. So, so in my pep talk stuff, purpose, experience, passion, performance, and story. Those are what I consider to be the elements to make a great speech. And obviously, what you've got in spades here is that driving passion for world peace. Now, how has that affected? Yeah, that's pushed you. The events of your father's death. Even back then, you said within a couple of years, well, within a year, you were actually speaking in front of an audience. That's quite a shift, isn't it? To suddenly go from nowhere into being platformed in front of hundreds of people.
Yeah, but it was not something I planned. So I travelled to Northern Ireland in March, and went to an amazing workshop in South Armagh. And someone who was there said, "I've got some people who I think would want to meet you. Come back to Belfast." So I cancelled my ticket. Off I went back to Belfast with her, and she took me to lots of amazing places where I met people who had safe houses for Catholics and Protestants, people who were trying to create some kind of harmony and peace in the middle of the conflict.
Right, yes.
It was amazing. And then she said to me, "Got to go to this place. It's a born again Christian place in Rostreva." So I think it's sort of south of Belfast. And as we drove there, she said there'd be like maybe 800, 1,000 people, and I could just listen. And then next thing I know, the organizer said, "Would you share a few words with us? You know, we're honored you're here." And I was terrified because I was really shy. And also, they were doing loads and loads of Jesus Christ prostrations, and they were clearly, for them, the reason they were there, they were linked by Jesus Christ. Now, what I was going to say had nothing to do with Jesus. It had to do with peace and love, but I wasn't going to mention Jesus. And I didn't think they'd appreciate what I was going to say. But I remember the moment I stood on that stage and the first word, there was a silence in that hall. And that's the silence that I've got used to when I speak. And I spoke for about 5 minutes. And in those days, I would say, I've forgiven and I believe in forgiveness. Later on, that became a harder thing to talk about. But I just sort of spoke from my heart.
Yeah.
Just a few. And you know, I met someone, can't remember when, but maybe a few years ago, who was there in that hall and remembers the incredible impact that I made back in '85. So I was 27. You know, the shy, not very kind of like strong young woman who was just kind of following this naive idea that I wanted to create something positive.
So from that, what came next from doing that? Because this is back in the 80s,
Yeah.
hard-nosed time in the 80s when everything was focused on massive success and making money. This wasn't the sort of the time that people weren't talking peace in the 80s that I recall. Battles with the miners and all such like.
No. Well, I think I probably want to take you a long way until like the peace process. So I did a few talks and I did a newspaper interview. I was part of a documentary in '86. But I really became a speaker in, I would say, sort of 2001.
Right.
And that was because in 2000, because the peace process, Patrick McGee, who was the only person who was held responsible for planting the bomb, came out of prison, and I chose to meet him in 2000. And the meetings became the subject of a documentary that went out in 2001. And that's when I started getting invitations. So I started off by speaking with Patrick McGee, just the two of us, which was incredible because I'm standing there with a guy who's killed my father, and we're talking about empathy and not demonization and listening and dialogue and the impact. I shared the impact on me of meeting Patrick and also losing my father. So very real things. And we never planned it. You know, he seemed to also have the ability just to put us on a stage, and then we'd work out who'd go first, and then that was it. And then we both just share. And it was very, very powerful.
Would you say he's become a friend now?
He has become a friend. It's a very unusual friendship. And at the moment, you know, I don't know whether we'll be speaking together again. You know, things have happened a lot in the last year, so I've no idea. And my work has almost gone beyond that vision I had then. And yes, I talk about meeting Patrick McGee, and every time I do it in a way as if I'm doing it for the first time, which I think is important. If I'm telling the story word for word for the same, then it wouldn't have any impact. So as a speaker, I find a place in me where I can speak where it's like I'm speaking for the first time, because I've never spoken to that audience before.
Yes.
So that's where I go to, but I don't plan it and I don't rehearse it, and I don't have notes. I hate having to work from notes. I just speak from my heart, and that's where I found my gift. If you asked me to read a speech, I'd be useless. I can't do that. But put me on any stage and I can speak from my heart. And it's, even though sometimes I'm not feeling great, I always, there's always amazing the impact. And I know that because of how people receive me. There's always that silence of the pin dropping. And then what I love is the questions and the responses. And then I move into being a facilitator.
So do you, when you're doing a speech, I mean, how long do you normally speak for then? Sorry.
You know, I'm someone who can, like, you can give me 3 minutes, you can give me an hour, you can give me 2 hours. So if it's interactive, then obviously it would be the longer length. But I'm so experienced now that, you know, it doesn't bother me. I can get a lot in 10 minutes. if I have half an hour. I mean, I do love when there's time for the interaction, where people can ask questions. It's not just about the questions, about people then making my story their story, because everyone's had experience of being demonized or being hurt. And so people make it into how it can impact them and change their lives in some way. And that's
And is this? I mean, when did Building Bridges to Peace come about?
so the charity, we actually got the official charity status in like 2008, but around 2003, I started getting a lot of invitations, things were happening. So I just created a very simple website and called it Building Bridges for Peace. And then it's sort of, grown from then as this vehicle. But it's a tiny charity.
You don't have to be big charities to make a big impact.
Yeah, well, it is my work. I mean, that's what it's for.
Yeah.
So it's not.
So this has obviously moved past. Obviously, the IRA situation is now, well, it keeps bubbling along with Brexit, but it's generally, I think we're all hoping that it's never going to go back to where it was. So where is your focus now with?
Well, the world, which so I used to say that I carried Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland sort of in my heart, and that's what I was focusing on. But now, to me, it's the world, because I know people from around the world. So, like just the other day, I met a woman in Iran who was talking about how they're struggling there with human rights, and she wants me to give a talk because she wants them to talk about not being bitter and what they can do about their trauma and build bridges. So now that's a new opportunity. So I'm open to any invitation in the world. So I call that sort of my charity self, which I'm doing a talk with some Palestinians and Israeli young people next week, which will be very meaningful. But then I'm also looking at to speak for different audiences, and I'm developing my own workshops. So I've been through such a process in myself of healing and transformation. I have gained through this experience.
Yes, yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah. So now I'm wanting to pass that on, and I'm very much someone who likes to create a safe place for people to be listened to find their own ways of recovering, how to have a difficult conversation, building resilience, and also how to share the impact of people's behavior without blaming or demonizing them. I also do quite a lot of that. So I've got a whole lot of skills now, which I've sort of creating a module and practicing on Zoom, because like everyone, I'm online.
I mean, obviously, large numbers of companies, and increasingly now, companies are becoming all businesses are becoming multinational. I think even as individual self-employed speakers, I find that I have a day when I'm in California 1 minute, and the next minute I'm in Switzerland, and then I'm in India, and then I'm back to Hull, and that's that's a day's speaking engagements, which could never have happened before.
No.
But obviously, I mean, one of the things that's pushing the LGBT agenda, for example, is that some countries like Britain and most of Europe are very positive about LGBT. Others, if we start to go to the Middle East, any Muslim country, but even in America, there are big challenges over LGBT. But of course, companies now have a branch in Oman. They have a branch in South Africa. They have a branch. So all these various different operations or mean that they have to try and address these multicultural conflicts all the time. Are you finding that that's helping to create a market for you to speak?
I would say I'm just starting that journey.
Right.
So what I'm focusing on right now is, I think in organizations there's a lot of people who've been through so much in the last year, different trauma, grief, uncertainty, loss, and I'm looking to support organizations to create a more restorative atmosphere, one where people are listened to, where it's safe, where they can manage their conflict before it erupts, where they can listen to each other. So bring my skills into an organization, because everyone deserves to, be listened to and heard and validated. And then, there are very, very simple ways that we can learn about communication that I've been learning over the past 20 years that I can pass on. So that's sort of where my focus is. there's organizations in this country, and I've got quite a lot of links in America. My next lot of workshops are going to be about conflict. I haven't got the title yet, but it's going to be small
conflict resolution.
Yeah, conflict resolution. Yeah. So, and people come in, they'll go through a process with me in a small group, because I love working with small groups, to look at their own experience of conflict. And sometimes the conflict is inside us. I mean, I've met loads of people, and I've had it myself, who've got a really strong voice in their head, sort of criticizing all the time. You know, we can work with that. We can change that.
Fascinating. It's a huge challenge, isn't it, to deal with?
Yeah.
I think from a speaking point of view, the thing I find is that very often these big issues, global issues, like, you know, planetary issues, such like, and I think people probably get a little bit touchy when I say, but somehow or another, those of us that have a voice that can help in these have to find a way to monetize this issue, because we can't just do it for free. I ran a social enterprise for 5 years, and we were wiped out because Cameron came into power thinking that the voluntary sector didn't need any money because it would do it out of the goodness of its heart, not realizing that we still have to have resources. We still have to have people who are committed to be somewhere every day, and if they don't get any money coming in for that, then they're going to have to find the money somewhere else, which means they can't be committed. So it's a huge challenge to bring that together.
Well, I know you understand that challenge, and those of us that want to give value to those that don't have any money, and they're the ones who are marginalized, who are having a challenging time, they deserve to be supported and helped. So it's, the money has to come from different ways, and that's sort of why I'm developing my work in the business world as a speaker, because when I speak, that gives me credibility. That's who I am.
Yes.
And then to go deeper into these workshops, and that's what I'm offering.
And is that beginning to work now? Do you think that's now opening up as some route for the future for you? That
I've started the first workshops, and so I'm getting more experience working on Zoom. You know, I'm so much a person who is used to seeing people and feeling them, and because I'm a feeling person. But actually, there's a lot that I found on Zoom that I can connect with people, and so that's given me a lot of sort of strength that I can do it virtually.
I think the big lesson for me was the PSA, the Professional Speaking Association Summit last October.
That was amazing.
Because all of a sudden I saw a level of engagement that actually I hadn't even seen in face-to-face events. I was stunned. Wow. I'm in my what was my dining room is now my office studio, etc. But it's not just where I work and go out. It's also if I attend a conference, I'm in the same place. I might move around. I might sit in different places. I might change backdrops and make it look as if it's very different, but it isn't. It's the same chair, the same desks, tables. But I found at the end of that week, I felt as if I'd been away for a week. It was just, there was so much going on. And I think the thing that really made it was the individual networking and group networking, and then the fun fringe sessions where you were doing face painting and juggling and all sorts of things on Zoom. And you're thinking, well, how can you do that on Zoom? But yes, you can. And I've seen Tom Morley doing his drum exercises, getting everybody shaking, and and you think actually there's so much we can do online that we've not thought about it because we've not been in an environment where everybody has to be there, and I think everybody's reaction has been, oh, it's online, I don't really like being online. And a lot of people I think are still terrified. Oh my God, everybody's going to see me. But no, I think we've got a huge amount of scope. Right. So, Joe, just a couple of thoughts I've put up here now. That's your main website, isn't it? If people want to come up, find you from your professional business level. We've also got let's get this one, this is the charity, buildingbridgesforpeace.org. And of course, they can find your TED Talk, and I've got those details of that in the show notes here.
Great.
So there's an awful lot to do, isn't there? World peace is not. It's not like it's a contribution, is it? We become contributors to the project. Are you doing anything with the United Nations on this at all, or because obviously that's a big agenda for them?
I did give a talk there many years ago.
Oh,
but
wow.
not at the moment. But after this, I'm going to take part in an international Zoom call with people around the world who are trying to create departments of peace within their own governments. So that, like we have the whole area about war, and this is an idea that would just be concentrating on peace. And of course, peace isn't just not having wars. It's about no one being demonized. It's about everyone being seen in their full humanity with the dignity. It's a lot more than just an absence of weapons and absence of people fighting. So I feel like I'm part of people around the world working for that, as are you. And we've all got like our area.
Yes.
It's usually, Ricky, the area where we've been hurt. That quite often ends up being the way we want to then change it, so that other people don't go through what you've gone through, what I've gone through. And I think that's quite a motivation. And that's also becomes like almost like our gift that we can give to the world. Like you work with young people. And
it's fairly clear to me that if we don't tackle some of the basic planetary issues of environmental issues, we cannot have peace when people are running out of water, when their crops are drying up, and it will ultimately result in war, civil wars, global wars, mass migrations, and all of these will create conflict. Those that have huge amounts will suddenly be targeted by those who have nothing. And if we don't tackle that inequality, I'm a big fan of Spirit Level, Richard. I've forgotten his name just gone, but anyway, the whole aspect of how do we create a fairer society, and my big message is, from everything I do, my passion is creating a fairer society where everyone has a voice.
I'm with you on that. Everyone has a voice, and it involves sharing.
Yes, absolutely. And I think we've got to learn we can't be greedy and have peace. And you can't have a beautiful world where somebody says, I want all the good bits, and you can just have the
so from what you're saying, or I believe, like, the peace happens when it's everyone in the world, and just because we're all right and other people aren't, that's not peace. It's about how can we share so everybody has access to water and food, and like even just how the vaccine's happening in the world, it makes me cry that it hasn't become something where it's shared around the world. Everyone has access to it. Sometimes I just despair.
Europe and Britain battle over who's going to get whose vaccine. I'm not going to go there, Joe. Joe, thank you very much.
Sharing and basically sharing and just having that love and respect and dignity for everyone in the world. And that's why I wanted to come speak with you, because I know that you understand that.
Treat everyone with dignity and respect.
Yeah.
Super. Joe, thank you so much for being on the show. Really appreciate that. I hope it's helped other people to see that, speaking comes from passion. When you've got that strong passion, something will happen that creates a sense of purpose, and all your experiences come into. Then you just got to learn how to perform it. That's largely about, as you're doing, just telling stories. So that's my my whole philosophy on it. Joe, thank you so much for being here. I'm just going to close the show down. Just hang on one.
Thank you.
So thank you very much indeed, Joe, for that. And thank you for being with me during this 31 days. No, it's not over. I'm just trying to work out exactly what the timetable will be. But during February, which starts tomorrow, is LGBT History Month. So I'm going to be doing lots of, I'm going to be back to doing the gender speaker shows on a regular basis, but I'm also doing PEPP story shows. So I'm going to be having one show a week running from next week. I just haven't worked out exactly which days, but it's almost certainly going to be late afternoon when we run them, so that it's available to those in the United States. Please remember, if you do need some help, some speaking coaching, just drop me a line at ricky@rickyarundel.com. Let's book up a free 30-minute introductory session, and I can help you to put a great speech together. So For now, thank you for being with me during January, and I look forward to seeing you in the new shows when they start next week. But I will be putting announcements out about that and hope to see you then. Take care for now.